morning, learning as a schutz, we're at the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Beis, we're in the middle of. We brought from a Mishnah in Menachos. We said Pigel b'kainitz v'loy b'levayin b'loy b'kainitz v'mei I pigel v'chayv v'lav kares. There are two parts of the avodah of putting of being makdir. The kaimitz, there's a kaimitz and there's levina, and those are both equivalent to the zrika of dam. You burn the kaimitz and together with the levina on the mizbech. Rameya says you chayev kares if you do one of them. You can't be mefagel b'chatzi mater. You have to be mefagel the whole mater. You have to have mater, right? This is zrika. It's what allows by kaimitz. It allows the person to eat the rest of the silas. Like by dam, when you bring the dam, you're being mater the basar to be eaten of the carbon. So this is a machlekes of whether it has to be b'pashtus. It's a machlekes of whether you have to, in order for something to become piggled, you have to have a machshava. But then we saw it's not that he holds that you could even be mefagel b'chatzi mater. Rather, he agrees you can't be. You have to be mefagel the whole mater. But he says, "Kalais al das rishaynu oisa." Whoever we're talking over there where he was mefagel in the first part, like he first had a machshavas pigel when he put the kmitza on the mizbeach, and then he was shaisik when he did the levina, or vice versa. He first did the levina, and then he did the kaimitz, but he did the levina with the machshavas pigel. So the reason over there why Rameya says it's not pigel is because why he says it is pigel, even though it's only a chatzi mater. It's not really a chatzi mater. He holds that when you have a machshava in half of it, that machshava will carry over into the later part. So then, I don't think we're gonna go over that machlekes, even though I said I would try to answer that question, but I think we're gonna leave it because I don't want to spend the time. So we'll move on. Meisvei. B'medva mamurim. The Gemara asked, we said this is when do we say that b'matana achas pigel, b'dam hanitan al mizbeach hachitzin? That's on dam that goes on the mizbeach hachitzin, regular carbon, a regular chatas. Al b'dam hanitan al mizbeach hapnimi, but for the damim, the carbonis that go on the inside mizbeach, which we've been exposed to for the last couple of days. That's the Parkoy Mashiach, Parham Dava Shal Tzibur, the Seirei Avodah Zara, and the I think it's and the matanas, the carbonis of Yom Kippur, the Parvasar Yom Kippur. And the Gemara explains, Kagoin Arboim v'Shalosh Shel Yom Kippurim, like the 43 matanas that you do on Yom Kippur. So Rashi gives a good accounting of how you get to 43. Achas l'mayla v'shevel amata al bein habadim. You do one upwards. If you remember, right, we said you do one with the upward motion and 7 with the downward motion. Bein habadim. So that's in the Kodesh Kadoshim, midam hapar, or kenegda midam hasar, right? The Kohen Gadol brought 2 karbanos. He had a dam, he had a par, a cow, as well as a sar. So that's Harei Tezayin, that's 16, 8 of each. Or kenegdan ala parechas, and then he would go out to the Heichel, and he would do it toward the parechas, the same 8 on each 7, 1 up and 7 down. So that's another 16, Harei Lamed Beis. Arba al kronos, then 4 on the corners of the mizbeach hapnimi. So that gets you to 36. Al kronos mizbeach hapnimi mishneim ke'echad muravin. You would mix the two of them together for that. So that would get you to 36. And then there would be 7 other hazos in addition to the 4 on the corners of the Mizbeach HaPnimi. There were also 7 on the top. We had two pshatim on what tiara means. It either means on the middle of the Mizbeach, the midpoint of the Mizbeach, or it means on it that we clear off on top of the Mizbeach Harei Memgim. So that gets you to 43. So we say the Dam Manit Mizbeach HaPnimi, like these 43 Shal Yom Kippurim, B'Charas or Shal Parkay and Mashiach, or the 11 of Parkay and Mashiach, where they would do 7 toward the Paroichas, and then do 4 on the Kronos. B'Charas or Shal Parhalam Davar Shal Tzibur, but the same 11 for the Parhalam Davar Shal Tzibur. Pigel, Bein B'Rishoina, Bein B'Shnia, Bein B'Shlishis, and he had a Machshavas Pigel, either in the first set. So this is going back on the first thing we said about Yom Kippur, where there were 3 separate sets of Hazais. There were first Lefnai V'Lefnim in the Kodesh Kadashim, like we said, 1 up and 7 down. Then he would go into the Heichel and do 1 up and 7 down toward the Parechas, toward the curtain that was between the Kodesh Kadashim and the Heichel. And then he would do on the Mizbeach itself. He did 4 on the corners and then 7 on top. So if you had a Machshavas Pigel, either in the first set, the ones in Kodesh Kadashim, or the second set in the Heichel, or on the third set on the Mizbeach in the Heichel, Remeya Oimel Pigel, V'chayv and of Karas, V'cham Oimel Ein by Karas, Achi Yifaga B'chol Amat. Remeya says it's Pigel, and you're going to be Chayiv Karas, and the Chum say, no, there's not Karas, because it wasn't all 43 Hazais, it was only one of the sets. It could either be any one of the 3 sets. That's not enough to be Mefagel. But the Gemara asks, Katanimiya, Pigel, Bein B'Rishona, Bein B'Shnia, Bein B'Shlishos. You have Machshavas Pigel in any one of the 3 sets. Upalig and Ramey is saying you're going to be Chayiv on Pigel. Now, if you remember, Reish Lakish had said that Ramey doesn't hold that you could be Mefagel in a Chatzi Matir. He said it's only going to be Pigel if you had a Machshav in the first Matir, and then he was Shaisik on the others. But over here we said he had a Machshavas Pigel either in the first or the second or the third set. That means even if he had a Machshavas Pigel in the third set, we're going to say it's Pigel, even though he was Shaisik. You can't say that's with typus Lashon Rishon if his Machshava was in the third set. This, according to Reish Lakish, only applies when he had a Machshavas Pigel in the first part. And then we say it carries over. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Avin, so Rav Yitzchak bar Avin answers, Hachamay Kinche Pigel b'shchita dechad mater. Kinche Pigel b'shchita dechad mater. We're talking about a different case. We're talking about where there's a unique din in this Mizbeach, this carbon of Yom Kippur, where he would do Hazoyis in the Kachay Kachim. He had 3 separate sets of Hazoyis, that if he did, let's say, the Zrikas in the Kachay Kachim, and then the rest of the dam was spilled out before he could spritz it, he doesn't have to start from the beginning and bring a new carbon and start from the beginning. Like normally, if a person shechted a carbon, and let's say a carbon pnimi that doesn't need these other hazais, or let's say a chatas, right? So carbon chatas, you need 4 hazais on the 4 kronos. That's not really a good example. According to the mandama that says you need a minimum of 2 hazais, Beis Shammai says you need 2 hazais in chatas. If you need to do both of them. So if a person did one of the hazais and then the dam spilled out, you couldn't just do the second hazah from a different carbon. You would have to get another carbon and start from the beginning. But it doesn't work that way with these hazais of Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, once you finished the hazais in the kachay kachim, if let's say the rest of the dam spilled out, you would just bring another carbon and start from the hazais in the heichel. So we're talking about over here, where let's say he shechted an animal. Let's say he did. This is what happened. He did the shchita, and he did the hazois lifnai v'lifnim and the kachei kachim, and then the dam spilled out, and now he's shechting another carbon and having in mind that it should be for the next set of hazois. So we're talking about not where he's being mazeh, where he's sprinkling, but rather he's shechting on one of these matirim, on one of these sets of dam. The chad natu. So in that case, it's an entire matir. The part that he has in mind is the whole matir. So that's the reason why Rameir says it's going to be pickle. So why do the Rabbanan disagree? It's correct that we're talking about where he has a machshava for that entire matter, because each one is looked on separately, legabe, that you could shecht a different carbon for it. Amarava man chacham Rebbe Eliezer. Now these chacham Rebbe Eliezer that they hold, Rebbe Eliezer, as we're going to see, holds that even if something is subdivided within an avodah, that it's treated as its own thing, as its own full matir, it's still not going to be mafagel. The Tanan, hakaimetz v'alavayna v'akteris and mechaskayanim mechaskayim Mashiach. All these different things are that if we say, where is it? We're talking over here, Legabe, all these different things. If someone brought a chelik of it outside, so these are all things. These are all things that are entirely consumed. No part of it is available for consumption. So the kaimetz gets burnt on the mizbeach. The levina also gets totally burnt. None of it is. I'm sorry. What are these things? This is a Mishnah later on in Daf Kuf Tes. I don't know why I can't find the Rashi. So let's see the Rashi. That he holds, even when you're being male, you're bringing something b'chutz, it could be potter if it's only a chatzi mata. Am a lava vaydi klach. These are all things. Hakaimetz on the vina and Tyrus. They're all They're all things that don't have a matir for them, and they themselves are matir. They themselves are consumed. They get burnt. The kaimetz gets burnt. The levina gets burnt. The Tyrus also gets burnt up. Minchas kainim. That when a kain brings a mincha, it gets fully consumed. Minchas kain mashiach or minchas nesachim. Even though the whole thing is consumed, there's nothing else happens to it. It's not matir. It doesn't have nothing is matir it. If you eat a kazayis of it, b'chutz yechayv. Rebbe Elazar poiter. Rebbe says poiter. He says you have to be makir of the whole thing. So you see that something, even though in and of itself it's an entire avodah in a sense. Even so, he says until you're makir of the whole thing, even if bring a kazayis of it b'chutz is not going to be chayav. So Rabbi Eliezer would also, we're saying Rabbi Eliezer would be the Rabbanan over here who would say that if you're maflig in the Rishona, meaning in the shechita of one of the three sets of Zrikas Hadam by the Parvasar of Yom Kippur, also that would not be enough to be mafagel. The same way over there, you're not going to be chayiv b'chutz unless you do the entire avodah. The same thing would apply legabe the shechita of one of the sets of the avodas of Yom Kippur. But Eliezer only said this din by these other avodas, not by Zrika Stam. The Tanan, Eliezer of Shimon Oimim, Mimakum Shapasuk, Mishamu Maschel. That the Tanakama had said, if you give part of, let's see the Rashi, the Tanan, Eliezer of Shimon Pligi Tanakama, the Amar Nasa Miktus Matanisha Bepnim, Benish Bechadam, if you gave part of the Zrikas, so part of the Matnas Dam Bifnim, and then the blood spilled out, Yavi Damacha V'Yaschel B'Tchila. But Rebbe Eliezer Shimon say, no, you don't have to start from the beginning. You can continue from where you got up to. So you see that according to Rebbe Eliezer, that it's although he said before Legabi taking a gazayis b'chutz that we're not going to treat it. You need the whole thing together. But he agrees Legabi Nesinas Dam, that's not the case, because he says you can continue if you're Nishbach the Dam, you can go continue from the place where you got up to by the Matnas Dam Bifnim. Ella Amba Rava. So Rava reinterprets that. So again, we were answering our original question. We said Reish Lakish said that Reb Meir's shita that you can be mafagel with either the levina or the kaimetz was talking about where he had it's only talking about, it's not because he holds mafagel b'chatzi mater, even though each one is only half of the mater that you could eat the rest of the silas. He said that's the reason over there is only because he had a machshav in the first part, and we say typhus lashon rishon. So we asked, we see that it says by the 43 hazoyas of Yom Kippur that are broken up into three different sets. That we said, pigel bein b'rishona, bein b'shniya, bein b'shlish. Remei have a pigel v'chayv and love karas. Remei says that if you may have a machshavas in any one of the three sets, you're going to be chayv pigel. Even though over there, it's not the first one that you could say that it's typus lashon rishon. It's even if you had in the last set. So now Rav is going to say a different teretz. No, he says kagoncha pigel b'rishon. It's not talking about where he was mafagel in the first set or the second set or the third set. We're talking about where he had a machshavas pigel in the first set. V'shasuk b'shni, and then he was quiet on the second set. V'chazur pigel b'shlish, and then he had a machshavas pigel on the third one. So the Gemara asks, if it's talking about where he had a machshava on the first and the third, what do you have to say that he had a machshavas pigel on the third? If the reason is because he had a machshavas pigel on the first one, and Rameya holds typhus lashon rishon, then what do we care that he had a machshavas pigel on the last one? He already was pigel even he was shaisik. So when it says Ma'adetem Yisak dat chadas rishaynu mahader pigul b'shus lamali, I would say I might think that where he had a machshavas pigel on the third one, that makes it worse. Because if he was going on the second one, what does it mean, al das rishaynu? We say if a person says something at the beginning, that's what he intends for the rest of the time, even if he's quiet. But the Gemara is saying, maybe the Bryce is saying, maybe if he popped up on the last one, he's saying this is pigel, that means it means that I wasn't thinking of pigel on the previous one. Otherwise, why would the person say it? So I might say that in this case, it's worse than if he hadn't had a machshavas pigel. It wouldn't be considered pigel, even though had he been quiet, it would have been pigel. Kamashla on that, no, we don't say that the last machshava takes away. The machshavas pigel on the last one means that the middle one that he was shaisik is not pigel. Maskal Rashi asks the obvious question: Midi shasik tani? In the Bryce it said, Bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniyas, bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniyah, bein b'shlishis, Ramei Omer Pigel v'chayv and olav karas. Didn't say anything about being shaisik. Midi shasik tani didn't say anything about being shaisik. It said he was b'rishayna, bein b'shniyas, bein b'shlishis. Alam Ravashi hacham ma'iskin kach pigel b'rishayna ub'shniyah ub'shlishis. We're talking about not where he had either a machshava in the first or second or third sets, but rather he had a machshavas pigel on all three of them, b'rishayna, b'shniyah, and b'shlishis. So ma'u the tema, I might say Isak that kolois al das rishayna oisa mahada pigula b'chachada b'chada lamali. I might say if he was doing al das rishayna, why is he going back and being mafagal on each one? And therefore, what does that mean? If he, I don't really understand what that means.
So that's doesn't.
I mean, but we're saying, so what he's saying, but it does. Who cares about Das Rishon? He said it on each one that he wants to be mafagal.
But that's indicative that so Shina, it's not typhus on the whole thing.
But we're saying why. So why we're saying why didn't the Mishnah give that? Why did we give this example? Why did we not give the example? Why do we have to give this case? Why didn't the Mishnah give a case where he was shasik on the other ones? So that's why Kamash Malon, that's why it had to say it with all three. That's not what the lashon of the Bryce is, or the Mishnah. It said very clearly, bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniyah, bein b'shlishis. Now you're saying that it means that he had a machshavas pigel on all three. It's not like the lashon. That's the kasha. It's a good kasha. I mean, it's very hard to understand, right? It's a very good kasha. That's why you're looking like that.
Yeah,
like
total confusion.
Right. You start off, you didn't want to ask at the time because it seemed like such an obvious question. It's not what it said, and now you're saying it's a. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. Omar Mar. So asking a kasha again on Rish Lakish that says that the explanation of a mayor is because of a typhus lashon rishon and not because of a mefagel that you could be mefagel b'chatzi mat. Omer pigel, Omer Mar, Remeir, Omer pigel v'chayv love kares. Remeir said it's pigel and yechayv love kares. Michti, kares lemechayid achi yikravu kol metir. We know the rule is that when someone is mefagel, when he has a machshavas pigel, he has to then play out the rest of the string. He has to do everything else properly. He has to be makar of all the other material in order for it to be pigel. If he doesn't, if he messes up on some other part, then it's just puzzle, but it doesn't get the din of karas to be mechayev. That the pigel is mechayev karas. The Omar kartzos kasha kachatzos puzzle. The din of hartzah, that the same way you have to do a whole carbon properly in order to get a ritzui, to get it accepted, so too with pigel, you have to also do everything properly other than the machshavas pigel. Martzos kasha achikru v'kol matir, v'hartzos puzzle achikru v'kol matir. You have to do all the rest of the things that are matir, let's say the basar of the carbon. Since he on a machshava, we're talking about a carbon pnim, where you have zrikas pnim, right? We're talking about one of those 5 carbonas that are done inside. Once he has a machshavas pigel on one of the zrikas, it's already possible. So therefore, when he's zyrik, the rest of the zrikas, it's as if he's not being zyrik. Yihadar madi behechel my ba'amadu kadi. The rest of his zrikas now, once a person has a machshavas pigel, so the carbon is possible. It might not become pigel to get karas, but the carbon is certainly possible with that first zrika that was not good. So then when he makes his other zrikas, The Gemara is saying within that same avodah, sadam, it's as if he's not being zayrik. It's as if, since you need all of these rikas, this is not a question in the zrikas b'chutz, because only the first zrika is ma'akav. But on in bifnim, that you need all of the zrikas. Let's say the zrikas on the kronos, that you need all the zrikas. You need all of them. But the zrikas on the kronos, you need to do all four. So once he did one, then the dam that he has waiting to do the next three zrikas is considered ma'ya ba'alma, because it's already a puzzle of carbon. So you're being zayrik, dam puzzle. So it should be treated as if you didn't finish all of the zrikas properly. You should never be able to have a dim pigel. I guess the only way you could have it is if you had a machshavas pigel on the last one. But if you had on the first one, we never said we're only talking about we have a machshavas pigel on the last one. It could be on any of them. Because if you have on all of them, you're certainly pigel, and that shouldn't be the case. Now, we have to also make a distinction. We know that when you can have a machshavas pigel by the shchita, and we don't say then when you do the Kabbalah Halacha and Zrika, that you're doing it with Mayim Ba'alma because it's already possible. Why is that any different than this? So the Rishonim explain that the Torah was misaken such a thing as pigel, and the Torah says you could do pigel by shchita, and not, which means even by shchita. Doesn't mean you have to do by all four of those things. It means by any one of them. The Torah tells you any one of them. So that's telling you if it's considered to be a hartzah legabi pigel for the other karbanos. And when you do the shchita, even though the dam is really puzzle, but legabi the dim pigel, when you're going to do the Kabbalah, the Hilacha, and the Zrika, it's considered that it's still good dam for that purpose. But within the same avodah, it's not so clear. So the Gemara is asking, how could you say that it's going to be pigel, even if he has a machshavas pigel on the first one, according to Reb Meir, but it should be that he's not having a hartzos kosher kach hartzos puzzle, that he's having you could call matira. Rabba says you can find it, like we said before, the din of the hazoyas chutz, the nesinas dam b'chutz is different than a regular hazah, that you can have a different carbon for each one of the four sets. There are four sets of zrikas that you do for the Parvasar of Yom Kippur. First, you do the 11. What was it? How many did we say? I'm sorry, 16 inside the kachei kachem, right? 8 for the soyer and 8 for the par. Then you do the next set is the 4 toward the paroichas and the hechel, which is again 16, 8 for the par and 8 for the soyer. Remember, 1 flicking up and 8 going and 7 going down. And then you have the 4 on the kronis, where you mix together the dam of the par and the soyer. And then you have on the tire the last 8. So you can, and we said before, you can subdivide it up, and you can do a separate shchita for each one of those sets. So we're saying that you could have, it's possible that you could have a machshavas pigel in the first set, and then you shecht another carbon for the second set. So if you had the machshavas pigel on the whole first set, you could still have that. You could bring a different carbon, and you'll end up having that when you bring the new carbon, that dam is not ma'ya ba'alma. That's a new dam that doesn't have a machshavas pigel on it. Rava says a different text. Afilu tema pafar echad, esar echad, lefiguloi miratza. But he says, nevertheless, just like we said before, that if you have a machshavas pigel on the shchita, it doesn't mean that the dam is ma'ya ba'alma when you do the Kabbalah and the Halacha and the Zrika, because that's the way the Torah was masaken, that even though the pigel passes the carbon, but it's meratza, it's considered to be good dam for the purposes of making a pigel. So too over here, even though even though he had a machshavas pigel in the first set of zrikas, we treat it as if it's still dam that's valid dam for the purposes of being mafagel the rest of the carbon.
So is he supposed to just stop at that point and not do anything?
Yeah, that would certainly be the right thing to do, right? If it's you the carbon, you're not accomplishing anything by continuing with the procedure. Once you have a machshavas pigel, so the carbon is puzzle. All you're doing by completing the rest of it is making that if someone eats the basar of that carbon, they're going to get karas. So, and I mean, I don't know exactly what the lav is of you doing it, but you're certainly not you're not accomplishing anything by continuing. The medva amurim. We said about again this din of Remeir and the machlekes Remeir and the Rabban. Medva amurim bekvitza, the matan kli ubehilach. I'm sorry, I skipped something. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Arboim v'shalosh. We had said that there were 43. I just gave the cheshbon of how we had 43 matnas dam on Yom Kippur, which were 16 in the Kodshei Kodshim, 16 toward the Paraychas, which is 32, then 4 on the Kronos, which is 36, and then another 7 on the Toyer, which is either on the middle or on the top of the Mizbeach. You're saying 43, but it was 47. So that's according to the Manda Amar, who says, the one that says that you came to 43, he says you mix together the dam of the tusi, the sire and the par when you get to the Kronos. So therefore you only have 43. He says the dam that you do on the Kronos was separate. There was 4 for the sire and 4 for the par, so therefore it's 4 extra. Instead of 43, it's 47. We have another mandam who says there were 48 zrikas. Mandam who said 48 because he holds the shirayim ma'akav. So he's counting even the nesina shirayim on the side of the mizbeach hachitzin as the 48, as part of the 48 nesina's dam on Yom Kippur. Practically more. Meisvei. Medva moment bekivitza. Bekmitza man kli behilach. Avabala laktara. But when it comes to being makdir, this is the original din. This is the original machlokes or Remeir and the Chachamim was legabe. We said the Remeir said if you do either the kmitza or the aktara, then it's going to be pigel. And we said Reish Lakish said the reason is because it's typhus lashon rishon. The Chachamim say no, you always have to have the whole mat there in order for it to be pigel. He's saying that's by kmitza and b'matan kli and behilach, which is the first 3 equivalents of the avodas adam of a mincha, right? The kmitza is similar to the shchita, and the matan kli and the hilach are similar to the kabbalah and the hilacha. Avabayla laktara, when it comes time to be makder, nasan as a kaimitz machshava v'salavayna b'shtika, or nasan as a kaimitz b'shtika v'salavayna b'machshava. Remeir oim pigel v'chayven alav kares. V'cham b'ayim b'mein b'kares ha'chivaga b'chol ha'mater. We're saying that this is going to we see the same machlekes that we had by Remeir before. I was saying whether he had nasan as a kaimitz machshava v'salavayna b'shtika, whether he first did the kaimitz with the machshavas pigel and then he was shaitzer by lavayna. The second case is that he did the kaimitz b'shtika and then he did the lavayna b'machshava. So you see that Remeir says it's pigel, even though his machshava was on the second part. So how could you, Reish Lakish, say that Remeir is only chaylik because of type is lashon rishon? We see over here Remeir is still saying his shita, even though the pigel was on the second part when he did the lavayna. Now when he did he did first the kaimitz b'shtika and then the lavayna b'machshava. Katani miyas the kaimitz b'shtika is a lavayna b'machshava upalig. So the Gemara says the Charid Shver and Reish Lakish. So the Gemara Ema Kfar Nasan is Salavayna Machshava. We're talking about where he already gave the Vavayna b'Machshava, and now he's doing it doesn't mean that it's doing in that order. It means he first did the Vavayna Machshava, and then he did the Kaimitz B'Shtika.
This question already. This question we're having right now on Rameir. Let me ask this already.
It's not a question of Rameir, it's a question of Rish Lakish's interpretation of Rameir. You're remembering that we saw a similar machlokes of Rameir and the Chachamim. But over there, we didn't say that's from over here where we said, but we didn't say like this over here. This Bryce is different. This is saying he did the Levina be pigel, machshavas pigel, and he was shaisik on over here was saying out that he first said a machshavas first was shaisik and then he did pigel. So the Shver and Rish Lakish. So the Gemara says no, it means where he did it the other way around. So the Gemara Chada, the Hainu Reisha. Gemara asks one question. First of all, if that's the case, where he first had a machshavas, he did machshavas, Vesalavayna b'machshava, that's the same as the first case. He did Nasanes hakaimitz b'machshava Vesalavayna b'shtik. What's the difference if he did the Levayna b'machshava first, or the kaimitz b'machshava first? In other cases, exactly the same. It's the same concept. And secondly, it's not what the Bryce said. It said Nasanes hakaimitz b'shtik Vesalavayna b'machshava. It says that it's saying it one after the other. So the Gemara kasha, it's taka good kasha. Again, this is very much like on the previous Gemara that it sticks out. Like, why would you think that this is a good way of interpreting it? And then it asks the kasha, the obvious question, and says kasha, which is a little bothersome. Okay, Hashem, I will see you on Matzah Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Is Elam going to Abba Subanim?
Okay.
Yeah, big deal. I don't remember what's the preference